Lyndhurst XMRMY here. We are going to do a review on the 570 XMR. The reason being is we've reached 3,215 kilometers on it, and it's been about, I think it's been 13 months. So I'm just going to give you a quick run through of every issue, likes, dislikes that I've kind of gone over, and kind of recap the year's mishaps, wins, and whatnot. So this here, if you haven't already figured out, is a 2017 570 Renegade XMR. So it does have the G2 frame, and yeah, so what we're gonna kind of do is run down all the basic stuff. Now before I do that, this review is brought to you by Cartronics Power Sports over in Kingston, Ontario. Whether it's parts, you can go see Preston and Vanessa. Whether it's service, go and see Luke Casey. If it's sales, you want to buy a 570 XMR, Sea-Doo, anything you name it related to BRP, go and see Jeff Vanderveer. And yeah, so that's Cartronics Power Sports. We're also giving away a ball cap as well as 2 Lyndhurst XMRMY decals. So again, you're going to want to go and subscribe to the channel below, and then we'll get that raffle done. All right, so let's dive into this. So I bought this in May of last year. Bought it brand new, so it was brand new old stock. The first thing I did, because I went and did a lot of research, and they were saying that issues with the Renegades were overheating because they put the rad in the bottom part of the frame, just underneath here. So that's where the rad originally was, and obviously if you're buying this to do a lot of mudding, that's not a very good spot to put a rad. They usually get caked on quite a bit. You got to make sure you have water to rinse it off, so on and so forth. So the first thing I did was went online, and I kind of tried to find the cheapest one that I could, because I tried to save money everywhere I can. And we came up with the Wild Boar Rad Relocate kit. The reason why I went with Wild Boar is because they did have the bumper relocate, so itself came with a bumper and then the Rad Relocate up top here. I didn't like the boar emblem, so I had somebody make up a plate. Don Makarenko over at Metalworks in Kingston as well. I basically designed it, and then he basically went and cut it and then made a plate for it. So we slapped that on there, so the rad is in behind. So since I've done that, I did that the first week that I bought the bike. I have not yet had any overheating issues whatsoever. I do run just Canadian Tire Prestone coolant in it, nothing fancy. If you follow the channel, you know how much abuse we put these through. And yeah, so you don't have to go break the bank with some sort of fancy engine ice or anything fancy like that coolant wise. If you're trying to stay on a budget, again, Prestone, anything from Canadian Tire, as long as it's aluminum rad friendly, that's the best way to go. Now, the Wild Boar kit itself came with a bunch of fittings. Some of the hose fittings like this were too small for the hose it came with, so I had to go and buy a different hose, as you can see here, which is a silicone hose. This is supposed to be more durable. Again, so that's 3,000 kilometers on everything. Again, it's nothing fancy. It just runs into down like that, then underneath, and then back into the top of the engine. So basically, that itself is what it came with the kit. It's held up. I've taken this through the bush, hit a couple trees. If you'll remember, I had a friend roll this quad, and the whole bumper and relocate was bent. So I had to bend that back, and even with bending it back, I didn't have to strengthen, replace, or re-weld anything. I had my friend over at Knight's Fab, Michael Knight, made me these brackets which utilize the stock bumper, and then take the sides, which were down here on the sides, and he welded them into the top bracket and then into the side here, so it makes it more sturdy, so it doesn't wobble all the time when you're driving. Especially with mud tires, the quad tends to wobble a bit. That was it for the front rad relocate. So no heating issues whatsoever once you relocate the rad. Again, that's extremely important. These Can-Ams like to overheat a lot because we do put them through a lot of stress. From there, the next thing that I did was tires. Now the reason why we have to do tires is obviously if you have your stock, you know, Trail Boss or whatever they're called, big horns, the lugs and the tread isn't exactly meant for mud, so you're not going to be moving quite well. So this particular ATV came with Mega Mayhems, or maybe they were Mudzillas, one or the other, I can't remember, but they were 28s. I didn't really like how they rode, especially at low speeds. The quad shook a lot. These here are Super ATV Terminators. They're 29.5 by 10 by 12. I have not had any issues whatsoever with this. They come from the factory. They come with a 1.5 inch lug. It's still at 1.5 inch, and I've put would be about 20, I think it's 22, I put 2,200 kilometers on these tires, and they're pretty much new, and I have not rotated them. With the 570s, they come with 12-inch beadlock rims, and I can't swap them with the back ones because the back ones are wider than the front, so I can't swap them around. So this is pretty much the setup I've ran for 2,200 kilometers, and the tires have been nothing but amazing. They're pretty light. Again, for an all-around trail mud ATV tire, they're perfect. That's what I wanted. I do a little bit of trail, some road, but not all that much. But for the mud, yeah, they're nothing but fantastic. So from there, a couple of small mods, nothing fancy, just this shifter on eBay. Had to cut out some of the stuff inside to make sure it fit. This switch does nothing. This is where I had my Halo switch, but I thought it was a pretty dumb spot down in the water. So I relocated up here, and I didn't want to have some random hole here, so I just put a switch in there, and that's pretty much all I did there. Come back to the front. So I cut the high beams out, routed them into the light bar itself. This light bar has chasing halos, so they match the far mudding halos. Far mudding halos, again, I put those on, I believe, a month or 2 months after I bought the ATV. I haven't had any major issues. The only thing that I've had an issue with is one of the halos, one of the chips inside stopped working, so I messaged Fred Rogers over at Far Mudding. He had one shipped over within a week, no extra cost to me. So again, Far Mudding halos has been nothing but the best when it comes to halos in my experience. As we come back, so we just have, you know, like some small things. So just like the paint, so that's the matte green to match my truck, which is also matte green, and Lyndhurst XMRMY in orange up top. Obviously, it's kind of the running theme over here is the orange and green. So from there, I had Grant Gannon at Quinty Vinyl and Upholstery. He made me this crash pad cover with the Lyndhurst XMRMY. From there, come back. So just some random stickers. Then I had this plate made up for the back. I didn't like how the link cue cut in and rubbed against my plastics there. It doesn't really matter because when my buddy rolled this, he put some pretty intense scratches into it anyways. But again, just minor details. It's an ATV. We drive it through the mud. What do you expect? You've probably noticed so far that I haven't cleaned it yet. I absolutely despise cleaning this ATV, especially when you ride every weekend, because you got to do it over and over and over again. So anyways, this plate was made up by Knight's Fab. So again, that's Michael Knight at Knight's Fab. Give him the design, he plasma cut it, and then I just basically bolted it into the Link Q back rack, just like that. Nothing fancy. Very good, good cost-wise. As we come back, so then you have the RJWC Mud Series dual slip-on. Easiest exhaust to put on. Maybe not so much with the XMR because you got to take the whole back bumper off and then you bolt it into the bumper itself. I have not repacked it. It has gotten louder since I bought it because the packing is pretty much more than likely all gone. But anyways, I didn't buy it to be quiet, so that sounded even better. From there, just slipped on. The other thing that I had to replace was the bracket that held the exhaust on. So that's just it's a Mishimoto exhaust clamp with a longer bolt, so I was able to tighten it down more. That was the only issue. I wasn't able to tighten it down enough, and then it eventually snapped, broke off because of the rust and whatnot. So I just replaced that. Keeps the exhaust on, you know, nothing fancy. This is a tied up paracord. That's Tony Hewitt. This is a toe assist strap. You know, when I ride, I know I like to bury it, and when it's buried, the mud is usually up here, and you don't want to go fishing down to put a clamp down here for somebody else's winch. So I just had an extension here, puts up, and then that hangs it up here. So it's usually easier, much easier to get to. So again, that's Tony Hewitt, tied up paracord. He does all sorts of colors, all sorts of lengths. He does tether cords, he does koozies, anything and everything paracord. That's your guy. From there we come back. So they kind of strayed away from the bellows. Again, I'm not sure why, but I thought it was better with these bellows. The reason why is because with open vents, when we go mudding, dust, mud, water gets into those open vents. They get into the diff eventually, and you have contamination. So these bellows, you're 100% guaranteed not to get any contaminants in through the vents, which is why I went to this bellow. Come back from there. I did put a plow plate on that because I use this ATV to plow in the winter time. I used it all this winter, had no issues whatsoever. It is what it is. It's an ATV. I use it to work. I pretty much do everything. I haul wood, haul trailers, pretty much everything around the yard. It hasn't let me down. As we move up again, so back to the Rad. The only thing that I found with going with larger tires is I had to find a different Rad hose. The reason why is when you turn this tire in, it rubs, especially under compression, it rubs under right about here. It was rubbing against the Rad hose. So I basically bought a 90-degree elbow and then shortened it so it basically comes up here. So when the tire's over here, it won't rub up against it, which is obviously ideal because it won't tear it off when you're doing, you know, 60, 70 kilometers an hour. Now, I haven't had any issues with the front diff, no leaks, no breaks, nothing bad. I haven't had to change anything. The only thing that I find is an issue now is the visco lock is not engaging properly. So within the near future, I will be putting a torque locker on there to make sure that I have all 4 tires guaranteed to turn, and that's what I want. Yeah, so from there, that's pretty much all of the add-ons that you can see. What you can't see, I bought a CV Tech Trail Block primary clutch and put it on there. The best, absolute best bang for your buck, especially when it comes to 570s, when you're trying to put more power to the wheels, to the pavement, to the mud, is the primary clutch needs to be changed. With the stock primary, stock weights, it was engaging at, I believe, it was engaging, sorry, at 1600 RPMs. With that CV Tech Trail Block and the upgraded weights, it was engaging at 2700 RPMs. So you're getting a lot more power off the initial get-go. So good for wheelies, good for mudding, pretty much everything, and I haven't had any issues with that. Still running the stock belt on 3,400 kilometers. No issues, no slips, no nothing. And again, I put this ATV through the test, through the ringer, quite a bit. You've probably noticed the plastics have been trimmed. I wasn't going to buy those floorboards. I just basically took a die grinder, cut the plastic out, because who likes to stay clean anyways, which is pretty much all your fenders are for, to keep you dry and clean. I don't want to stay dry or clean, so I cut those off, throws a lot more mud, and it looks more aggressive. You can just see a lot more of the tires, and that's pretty much what I was going for. Now, issues. It's gonna be pretty short. The only issue that I've had with this has been the rear diff. Now, I know that it's been pretty common with G2, anything G2 Bombardier, or BRP I should say, sorry, CANAM, is the diffs tend to leak a lot, whether it's axle seals, pinion seals, pinion bearings, anything diff related with the rear tends to become an issue quite early on, and that's been the only problem that I've had. It got to the point where it was, you know, taking on water every ride. I just went out and bought a bulk pack of that diff fluid and basically just changed the fluid out every ride, which isn't a bad thing. It sucks if you're doing a lot of road and trail because you're not filling it back up with water, which means that it's going to eventually run out. But when you're running water a lot, it just fills back up, so you're good to go as long as you change that right after the ride. I finally decided to change all the seals, and it's been sealed. So I guess that's all it is. You just got to pay attention, make sure that all your seals are proper, make sure nothing's leaking, all your bearings are properly maintained, and that's all it was. I went to Cartronics, picked up the needle bearing at the inside of the pinion. I changed the race bearing on top of the pinion, and then I changed the pinion seal at the front. I did have an issue with the rear output bolt that holds the drive shaft to your gearbox. The bolt had come all the way off and the drive shaft had slipped back, so it was thrashing around, which eventually ruined my U-joints. So I had to replace them. The U-joints on the drive shaft, that happened at 2,800 kilometers. But again, I've replaced the U-joints and all the seals, and nothing's been an issue. The reason why this axle is all dinged up is because I had this toe assist over here, and it came off the strap and it wrapped around the axle, and it was just rubbing the crap out of it, so it's a little rusted. Now, all in all, again, this ATV has been really great to me, especially considering all the abuse I've put it through. Like I said, 2017 XMR 570, definitely a good buy. If you're just getting into the introductory mud, basically anything, this is definitely the ATV for you. Very low cost to riding ratio. All depends on how you ride, and if you maintain it, it will be good to you. I've rolled this, geez, I can't even count how many times. I believe I'd probably need about 4 sets of hands to count how many fingers and times that I've rolled this. As you can see, I've broken both of the outer handrails. Just the cost of riding, especially when you roll it. I bought these risers from Amazon. They were $30, and they've taken all the abuse. They haven't broken, nothing's broken other than these CANAM handlebars. But again, all I have to do is just cut that, file it off, and there you go. It still works. You gotta tighten that down. I did break the brake handle, but those are for the front brakes. As long as you got the rear brakes, you're good to go. Another modification I did, and will be the last one that we talk about, is the rear brake. The foot pedal, we were on a ride in Augusta in the back trails, and Buddy's 1000 XMR Outlander locked up, and we couldn't figure out why. The tires were completely locked, the brakes were on. He couldn't figure out why. It was only about 20 kilometers down the trail where we figured out that there was a stick that was wedged into the foot lever. So again, I don't want that to happen to me on the trail. So simplest thing to do was just to take the 2 bolts out and remove the lever. And that's that. Other than that, just regular maintenance, changing the fluids every 1,000 kilometers, cleaning and replacing the oil around your air filter. Guys, it's really straightforward. You take care of your machines, they'll obviously take care of you. So once again, that's the 3,000 plus kilometers on the 2017 570 XMR. Subscribe and get ready for some more intense videos.